I think all we should do now is go out and give it a test drive and see what a Stage 1 S3 really drives like. Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Now, I got into buying and selling cars 20 years ago because I just loved driving different cars, and the only way to do that was to become a motor trader. Well, today I still get a buzz from the process, but not every car I buy personally excites me. Many are just bought to be sold on. But there are still cars that get my pulse racing, and they could either be newer cars I've not yet driven that I really want to drive, or they could be older cars I've driven in the past that I want to reacquaint myself with. Well, it was the latter situation I found myself in last week when an old customer who'd previously sold me his Mark 5 R32 offered me his original Mk1 Audi S3, the car you see here. Now, just over a year ago, I made a video on this model and concluded that I liked it a lot, and have been casually looking at Auto Trader ever since, but I haven't found a car that suits my needs. So when this basically fell at my feet, I couldn't say no. So the chap brought it round within about an hour, and we had a good look at it, although it was covered in mud and rain because it was a very wet day. But we had a good look at it, had a good test drive. I even plugged my computer in, and guess what? I found quite a few things wrong with it, but they're all fixable. So in this video, I want to show to you the reality of buying a complicated modern classic like the original Audi S3. So let's start off then with a walk around. We'll after that do a diagnostic check. We'll go for a test drive to demonstrate the faults that are apparent, and then we'll go for a test drive with it partially fixed. So let's get cracking. Okay, before we get started, I just want to say a big thanks to everybody who's watched and commented on the Porsche Boxster auction collection video. That's gone down really well, lots of great comments, so big thanks for that. I'm glad you guys are interested in it because it's a little bit different to the Golf GTI and sort of normal Audi stuff that is on the channel, but I think it's an accessible performance car. You don't have to have a GTS, a 2.7 or an S is still a really great entry into the world of sports cars. But just be careful if you're used to driving Golfs, because they are a bit of a handful, as I found out yesterday. That's for another day. But yeah, big thanks. And if you're wondering why my hair is even messier than usual, it's because I had to have the roof down at least once and stupidly decided to do it on the way here today, but it is quite warm. Right, let's talk about the S3 then. So, first generation S3, Phantom Black, 80,000 miles, 5 owners in 18 or 19 years, not bad at all. Curiously, the first owner was called Ms. Linton, as in Linton Travel Tavern. The last owner but one was called Mr. Linton, so it's a bit of a coincidence that. So if you are Mr. Linton from, I think, somewhere up north, like Lancashire, or Ms. Linton from somewhere down in the home counties, get in touch. Love to know the story on this car, because Ms. Linton particularly loved it because when it was pretty much brand new, I think it had 400 miles on the clock, she took it to AMD in Bicester, she had it remapped, she had the wheel swapped for these ones, she had the original 17-inch Avis, and she had Coney top adjustable shocks. I don't know if you can see the yellow in there. Oh yeah, you can now. Cool. So yeah, hard to believe they've been on it for nearly 20 years, but they have. She also had a Miltec exhaust fitted, which is not unusual, looks pretty standard really. But you can see the big box maybe down there. So yeah, been modified pretty much from day one. Nothing cosmetically different about it, which is how I like them. I think this engine does come alive with a remap, and it is pretty tough as long as you maintain it, so it's not one of those engines like modern cars that are not sufficiently over-engineered for the additional power and torque a remap produces. So that's it really. Now, I bought it wet and dirty, so I took a real big gamble, but the seller was a doctor and he's a nice guy, so I kind of trusted him when he said there wasn't an awful lot wrong with it. He pointed out a scratch somewhere on here, but it'll polish out anyway. There are a few chips on the bumper, but I think once you polish them back and use colour magic on it, it will look actually like new. It wouldn't need painting. There's not really an awful lot else, which makes you wonder. I mean, there is a chip there. I'm pretty sure it's had a fair bit of paintwork and really haven't had a good look at it yet. Now, a problem with S3s is they do rust in the gutters here, and this car has got very early stages of it just there. I don't know if you can see the lacquer is a little bit wrinkly. It's a bit like it's wet, but it's not. So that's not great, but it's not the end of the world. I've seen a lot worse. In fact, I nearly bought a Nagaro blue one back in the summer from a really nice guy in like Malmesbury or somewhere in the sort of southwest Cotswolds. And he said, before you come, because it's going to take you a couple of hours to get here, just need to tell you it's a little bit rusty in the roof. And he sent me some photos, and it was really bad. And I don't think you can really fix that easily. I've seen it before in other cars, like Lupo GTIs. So I let that one go, but that was a really nice car. I'd done about 96k. I think he wanted about £5,000 for it. Well, this, the chap originally wanted £8,000 for it. We kind of got back to 6.5 as a realistic dealer price. 8 grand probably the dealer sale price. And then we opened the AMD receipt and it said these wheels were replicas. So that kind of devalued the car. And I'm looking for some original 17-inch Avis to replace them with. So we got down to 6, and then I said, okay, but I need to test drive it to make sure it's all right. And quite a few things happened on the test drive that made it a couple of £100 less. I think when you find out what I need to do to this car, you'll find that £200 is actually a very little bit of negotiation. So let's have a look inside anyway before we get on to the mechanicals. Now, it's quite nice actually to see an S3 with black exterior, or a good exterior colour and a good interior colour, because quite often you get a nice outside colour, but they can be silver leather or some funny Alcantara that I don't particularly like. So this is, yeah, black on black, and it's all right. I haven't cleaned it. I haven't done any prep to it apart from just wash it very quickly. And it's still got the airbag sticker there. It hasn't been painted over, so it's all pretty good. I really haven't been able to see how much paintwork it's had, but if it's been painted, it's been done really well. All these edges are good. In the glove box there's a really nice leather wallet, and there is some sort of iPod adapter. Not sure why that's loose, but that does shut. So there we go, that's the passenger side. It will clean up all right. Let's have a look at the driver's side before we have a look in the boot and under the bonnet. Okay, so yeah, 80,752 miles. I think that bolster's done well, in bearing in mind the mileage. Back seats, yeah, really nice. Yep, steering wheel's good. Soft touch on this. Audi does wear, so there's a bit of wear there. The climate control actually hasn't worn as badly as some, so that's pretty good. Radio's got a bit on it as well, but easily fixed. Gear knob's good. Leather on there is good too. I'll pull the bonnet. We'll just have a quick look in the boot. So when the car comes in wet, all you can do is, no corrosion on there either, which is quite a common thing. All you can do is look at the edges. So if a car's been painted, there'll be some rough edges here where the painter doesn't really think anyone's that bothered about looking. Look at the quarter panel seams as well. They're never normally that tidy if they've been replaced, so that's good as well. No edges there, but the edges in here are pretty crucial. There, just run your finger down there. Just look for some dry paint or you know, obvious masking marks. Okay, then we have, of course, the telescopic strut. First thing I noticed was that the dipstick pull was missing. It's been broken. They get really hot and fragile, but yeah, not ideal. Quite easy to replace though. And other than that, it looked okay. There's a bit too much coolant in there, but these things happen if it's had a bit of work. Screw missing from there, like a TT. It's basically a TT 225 engine. This is a 225, by the way, with a BAM engine code. Got a sticker still present under there as well. Oh yeah, sign of an air mass meter replacement there with a sticker on it. There was a receipt that suggested it had been done as well. So couldn't really find an awful lot wrong with it under there. And before I drive cars these days, I do tend to run a diagnostic check. So let's do that now and show you what comes up. Okay, we've got VCDS diagnostic software, previously known as VAGCOM, connected to the car via my trusty laptop, and this cable via the USB port to the OBD port here. We've got the ignition on, so all the systems are powered up. Now on newer cars, you can just press the auto scan button and it goes through all these modules here in one go and very quickly tells you if there are faults. On this older car, we can't do that, so we have to go into them individually. But there aren't really that many to check, but really that can cause expensive problems. So of course we need to look at the engine, we need to look at the air conditioning system, and we need to look at the all-wheel drive. If it was automatic, which can't be, if it's an S3, it's always worth checking that as well. So let's start off then with the engine. So it's talking to the ECU now. When all this fills in with green, it's connected, okay, and now we can go into fault codes. And there are two. Okay, first one is boost pressure regulation valve, the N75 valve. This basically alters the amount of turbo boost based upon how much throttle you're applying. It's a solenoid, it's an electronic device that alters the amount of vacuum to the wastegate, and it's pretty reliable, but they can fail and they're quite easy to replace, so I'm not too worried about that. Normally, if they're playing up early on, you get a boost pressure fault where the boost isn't within the parameters the engine expects, but this one is just writing off the actual solenoid straight away, so that's probably a good thing, I think. And we have coolant temperature sensor. Well, this basically, as you can probably imagine, measures the coolant temperature sensor and alters the fueling accordingly. When they're faulty, they kind of drop out sometimes halfway in their operating zone, so you might drive up to fully operating temperature, which is about 100 degrees, 90 degrees, leave it for a bit so it's down to 70, but when it reaches 70 it might go a bit weird and start thinking it's minus 44, so you've left the car for half an hour, you come back to it when it's a little bit cooler and you try and start it, it won't start, and you can smell petrol coming out the exhaust because it thinks it's minus 44. So that's something to watch. We'll see how that affects the test drive, but there's no doubt about it, if it's logging a fault you need to replace that part. Okay, let's now go and drive the car and see if there's any obvious problems with it. Okay, I'm currently a couple of miles into a test drive, just got the car warmed up and I've got the computer connected still. We're going to log data while we drive, and we're going to log the coolant temperature sensor and we're going to log the turbo boost pressure. There are two readings for the boost pressure. One is what the ECU wants the turbo to produce, and one is what the turbo is actually producing. They should be very closely linked. If they go out of being within the certain parameters, that does log a boost pressure fault, whether there's too much boost or too little boost. So we'll leave that to log while we drive and then have a look at it when we get back. So that's good to go, we're recording. Now, you don't need a computer to do this, but it helps. You should be able to feel if the boost pressure is correct. Now, if you haven't driven an S3 before, you may not know what to expect, but this is still basically a 300 horsepower car with this map, and it's about, what I reckon, 1400 kilograms, so it should feel pretty perky. Say a little bit slower than a Mark 7 Golf R, which is a bit heavier, might have a little bit more power and torque. So that's flat out in second again. It's got some boost, yeah, but it's a fair bit below where it should be. But this is a stage 1 car. It should, not only should it be faster, but it should also feel a lot more responsive on the throttle. I'd say it probably feels like a 150, 1.8T Golf. So alright, but not exactly exciting, so there's definitely something wrong there. I don't think it's turbo, or you can't really condemn the turbo until you have a look at the boost control valve, because the turbo is like £1,000 and the boost control valve is like, I don't know, 40, 50, and a lot easier to replace as well. Temperature gauge by now should really have got up to temperature. It's on about 80. So quite common on this, apart from sensor failing, is the thermostat failing. And unlike the olden days when thermostats used to fail, cars used to overheat, I'll just put the demister on. They fail safe now, so if anything the engine undercools, and that's not great for a car because you're effectively running on choke all the time, so that will just make the engine wear out a lot more quickly. The good news is, unlike the Mark 5 Golf and pretty much every car from then onwards, the thermostat on this car is really quite easy. It's just next to the alternator. There's not an awful lot of stuff in the way, so I don't mind doing that. So let's get back and let's firstly concentrate on the boost control valve. I think I'll do the thermostat and the temperature sensor as a matter of course another day. We just want to get it boosting and feeling like a stage 1 S3. Okay, we're now in the workshop, so we can safely look at the data that we logged while we were driving. We've got it here in an Excel spreadsheet. The right two columns we'll start off looking at, which is the specified boost pressure, how much the ECU of the car wants, and how much the turbo is actually giving, is on the right hand side here. So if you look down when we started driving, there's a situation here where it was wanted 1460 millibars of boost pressure. It only got 1290. You've got to bear in mind 1000 millibars is just purely atmospheric pressure, so it's what's above the 1000 that is boost pressure. So it's almost half of what it's asking for, it's getting. So the car is basically in some sort of safe mode. Next, let's look at the coolant temperature, which is column 3 here. So we've been idling a bit, and when we started driving and we gave it a bit of throttle, it was in the 73, 74 range. Actually, it should have been higher than that by that point anyway, because the lay-by I stopped in was quite a long way from here. And then we drove back pretty sedately and got on the dual carriageway with lots of air flowing around the engine, and the coolant temperature actually went down from the mid-70s down to the mid-60s really, really quickly. And that's not right. It's happening because the thermostat has failed. In the olden days, when a thermostat failed, the car overheated. Now the car overcools. And that's bad because it's chucking more fuel into the engine than it would otherwise need. That's bad for fuel consumption. It's also bad for the engines. That needs to be done for sure. It's not too hard to do on this car. On a B5 RS4, it's not great, particularly if you've recently had a cam belt change by a main dealer and they haven't changed the thermostat, because to do the thermostat, you have to do basically a cam belt change. Luckily on this car, it's relatively easy, so that's not a bad thing. The cam belt, by the way, on this car was done in 2019, so it's got a few more years to go yet, which is really quite good, because they're not particularly nice to do on these cars, because the engine mount is really in the way. Coolant temperature sensor, if it's logging faults, you just change it. There's no messing around. It's not expensive or hard to do. Boost control valve though, that's really the important one. So what I do, and what I did when the owner was here, is I got into VCDS and I did an output test. This basically sends power to the sensors and solenoids under the bonnet, so you can hear them running. If you can't hear them running, you know you've got a problem. It could be wiring, it could be the sensor or the solenoid. Okay, you can hear maybe the evap purge valve rumbling under the bonnet. That basically captures vapor from the fuel tank and allows the engine to burn it rather than go into the environment. I can hear that really clearly, but that's not what we're looking for. We want boost pressure regulation valve. So this normally ticks, a bit like a time bomb about to explode. Tick, tick, tick. And it's located under this cover, so we'll just take this off. No, I've already done those. Okay, and this is the valve. Now when I was looking at this with the customer, I touched the wiring and it would start clicking, and I was like, okay, we can hear it working, but it should be doing this all the time, not just when I'm touching the wiring. I touched the wiring again, and guess what happened? It just broke off. So you've got a green wire and a brown wire there, just completely disconnected from the plug here. So that kind of explained that pretty convincingly. So what I'm going to do now is try and make a temporary repair to that plug, so then we can go and test drive the car and see what it's like when it boosts. Could produce other problems. So yeah, let's get fixing those broken wires. Okay, so what I've done is make a temporary repair to the wiring on the plug and then connect that to the existing wiring loom. It's not pretty, this is just temporary. Proper repair is to buy a new plug with the wiring attached to it and then crimp that to the existing loom. Not a big job at all, but this is, as I say, just to test the car now so we can see what it drives like with a proper load of boost. Now Vadcom is running the output test that didn't create any noise before. If you can hear now, I'll lean over because the mic's on me. There, it just stopped because it timed out. So that was it actually working. So I think all we should do now is go out and give it a test drive and see what a stage 1 S3 really drives like. Okay, before we go for the test drive, I just want to log the boost pressure data, so I've got something to show you as proof of how different it is now with the valve wired up properly compared to how it was before with the broken wiring. So I'll just get that started now, put that on the passenger seat, and there's no real need to look at it. I'll turn this light off, it has got dark now. It shouldn't really take an awful lot of driving to feel a difference. I think already it feels a lot punchier. Okay. That is what I call boost. Let's do that again. That's third gear, so 3000 RPM, and then it kicks hard. Alright, fourth gear, 2000, bit of lag, starts to build, and oh yes, 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 we've got a fair bit of horsepower there. So there's no need to test it anymore. The engine isn't fully warmed up right now, so it's probably best to keep things short and sweet, but you either get boost or you don't. That's how this fault works, and we most definitely have, even at, you know, up to 40 miles an hour. It's pretty obvious. And there's no funny noises from the turbo, so hopefully, you know, it's okay, but now it's running more boost. Will we get problems with the intercooler hoses and stuff like that? Who knows? But yeah, let's just got to do that again now, so let's do it in second gear, keep the speed a bit lower. So that's 1500 RPM, foot to the boards, 2.5, 3, yeah, oh, wow. This is a great engine, and it does really come alive with a remap, so feel that torque, it's unbelievable. That just feels like modern day levels of performance. Wow. Okay, well, there's still a lot more testing to do before I can be totally confident with this car, but we've made it run properly and it's cost like nothing. So yeah, that's a good result. Okay, now let's have a look at the new boost pressure data. Bear in mind, about 1000 millibars is atmospheric pressure, so the turbo boost is what's above the 1000. Before, it was asking for 1500 millibars, so about half a bar of boost and getting about 0.3. Now it's quite a bit different. So let's find where it starts to boost on here. So you can see figures there are really different. We've already got 2240, 23, 2320, and then 2310. So you can see the boost produced is actually almost 1.4 bar there, so slightly over, but then the N75 valve will bring it down so it's close. They don't have to be perfectly matched. They can be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. It's a very inexact science because we're dealing with vacuum pressure here. It's not like a very digital system, it's quite analog. So yeah, that is a pretty conclusive result for the S3. So yeah, that's it. I kind of think I've got the measure of it, but I haven't lifted it up yet. That's probably one for another video, but I know there's a lot of love for the original S3. So hopefully this video will fire you guys up and you can ask me whatever you want to know about this car. If I can't answer straight away, I'll put it into a video if it's a worthy enough subject. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed this Volks Wizard video. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Please do comment, please do share. As ever, please do subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.